I am in Canton, Ohio, the hometown of President William McKinley, and I am outside of the president's tomb and also the McKinley Presidential Library and Museum. I've always been a big presidential buff. It's one of my goals in the near future to visit the grave sites of all the presidents. I'm not too well there yet, but I've not been here. And William McKinley was the 25th president of the United States from 1897 to his assassination in 1901. A lot of people view him as controversial, the whole imperialism thing, but while that is controversial, that is very important to our foreign policy. You can really consider him the first modern president of the United States. And a lot of people also see him as very underrated for his leadership skills and some of the things he did while in office and throughout his life. So we're going to explore the life and legacy of President McKinley here at the museum and at his final resting place. Let's go check this out. So first we're going to check out the Presidential Library and Museum. Now this isn't an official one, so it's kind of mixed in with like a lot of different things. But there is a lot of areas dedicated to McKinley, and I think they have the largest public collection of McKinley artifacts. So this is going to be good. And here's a bust of William McKinley outside the Presidential Library. Here they have a 3-volts pendulum. This is one of McKinley's hats. Campaign lantern from the 1900 campaign. Here's some arrowheads. So Bezalel Wells used that compass to survey Canton in 1805. A journalist was murdered here in Canton. Here's a 19th century rope bed. This exhibit is on Stark County history. Some artifacts used by the pioneers. Some blacksmithy tools. Joshua Gibbs of Canton patented the first plow. After the success of the Erie Canal, Ohio wanted to build some canals, and the Ohio and Erie Canal went through the county. But very soon after that, railroads replaced these canals, and they were spread all over the state by the 1850s. Some Civil War artifacts. This really intricate grandfather clock is from the home of Zebulon Davis, who owned a cement company and was the first person in Stark County to own an automobile. Some artifacts from the repository, the first business to get a telegraph installed in 1849. An E. Howard Tower clock that was made in Boston in 1886 and was in the clock tower of the Duber Hampton Watch Company in Canton, and it still works. A parlor setup full of Victorian era antiques. A stupid looking penny farthing bike. That's some Jumbo the Elephant glassware. Guess this is the merch line for the most famous circus elephant in history. A Sears 1908 Model J Runabout, which could be bought through the Sears catalog. And a 1921 Holmes automobile. Some 40s and 50s fashion. The Hoover Suction Sweeper Company was based in Canton in its heyday before being sold off to foreign corporations, and they were a household name due to their vacuum cleaners that were manufactured in the county. a World War I uniform, and some accessories a soldier would have worn. Some uniforms from the various women's military organizations in World War II. V-mail was often used to send mail, and they would photograph the letters and shrink them to save space in the mail. This is very unique and creepy. Beulah the Laughing Lady, or sometimes called a Laughing Sal. She was in the Laugh in the Dark ride at a long-gone amusement park in Canton called Myers Lake Park. These are still used at some places. I learned that this company got this audio by getting a woman drunk and, without her knowing, recording her loopy laugh. Now this is the Mckinley Room, full of artifacts of President William McKinley and his wife Ida Saxton McKinley. He was born in Niles, Ohio in 1843, and he went on to serve in the Civil War, and is known for his brave coffee running under fire at Antietam. After that, he moved here to Canton and practiced law, and married Ida Saxton in 1871. This is William McKinley's rocking chair. He was elected to Congress in 1876, and the most well-known piece of legislation he authored was the 1890 McKinley Tariff, which was a very controversial protective tariff. After this, the Democratic Party actually gerrymandered his districts, and he ended up losing his seat in that year's election by a landslide. This black walnut entryway and door was saved from the Altman Harder Mansion, which McKinley certainly would have walked through on many occasions. He was elected governor of Ohio in 1893, and his friend, Cleveland banker and later Senator Mark Hanna, was able to secure him the Republican nomination for president in 1896, which he won, and he also defeated Bryan again in 1900. Most items in here belonged to the McKinleys. It was hard to know what was what because there weren't really any placards. Under McKinley, there was lots of economic growth. He advocated for the gold standard, and the Gold Standard Act was passed in 1900. That was McKinley's congressional desk. The Spanish-American War occurred under his presidency in 1898. The victory was very quick and decisive. Spain turned over control of the Philippines, Puerto Rico, and Guam, and Cuba was promised independence, but it was still kept under the control of the U.S. Army. The U.S. also annexed Hawaii in this time. In his fairly short second term, he focused on imperialism, protectionism, and against free silver, which is expansionary monetary policy. Those are actually robots of the President and First Lady, though they weren't working when I visited, and I don't think they've worked for a long time. That would be pretty cool. Most of these furnishings were likely from the McKinley home, which unfortunately no longer stands. A replica of McKinley's White House telephone. This is one of the desks used at his office at the White House. The Oval Office was built later by Teddy Roosevelt. The gilded obelisk was a diplomatic gift from Egypt. And this clock is from Tsar Nicholas II of Russia, who was executed by the Bolsheviks later on. This is really cool. It could be used as a flag stand, but McKinley was 5'7", not a very tall man for that time. And this was a secret height stand for speeches and when he posed for photos. This weaving would have been a diplomatic gift. Here are some artifacts of Ida McKinley. She was very fragile and had a nervous temperament, along with many other health problems, which made being First Lady extremely difficult for her. This is Ida's gold and diamond tiara, with about 200 diamonds, and the museum recently got this after it was featured on Pawn Stars. Some of William's shaving accessories, and a bank book from when he was governor. His maple wood dumbbells. This is McKinley's Masonic stash. He was a very active Mason and joined the Masonic Lodge after seeing a Union Mason giving money to Confederate POWs who were also Masons. And he did the oath and ceremony in Winchester, Virginia in May of 1865. Here's some campaign memorabilia from the important realigning election of 1896, which is considered so important due to it being the beginning of the populist era and a 14-year Republican dominance of the presidency. These are from the White House years. This lace was a gift from the First Lady of Paraguay in 1899. The bell is made of brass from the USS Maine, and these are some canes. All of this came to an end at the Pan American Exposition in Buffalo, New York, which the president visited. On September 6, 1901, he was shot by a crazed anarchist named Leon Czolgosz. This is a replica of the gun he used. McKinley wore this nightshirt while trying to recover from the gunshot for 8 days until he succumbed to his wounds on September 14, 1901. It can be seen where the doctors cut through the shirt on the back side to remove it or expose the back, and it possibly is proof that there was some emergency medical procedure that may have taken place. He was a fairly popular president at that time, so there was an outpouring of grief and an elaborate funeral in Buffalo, Washington, D.C., and later Canton. The museum has a great Streets of Yesterday area depicting the old businesses and homes full of antiques. I have to say the one at the House on the Rock is the best I've seen, but they've done a really great job with this one. A pioneer cabin from the early 19th century with a loft. The dry goods store. The printing office, apparently during Andrew Jackson's presidency because there's a photo of him. Mail pouch tobacco ads were a common sight on old barns and the back roads. A Carpenters Workshop. An upper middle class Victorian era parlor with creepy wax figures. The gruesome horrors of the 19th century dentist. This appears to be a hobby shop. The blacksmith. They even have an Old West style saloon and inn. A classic barbershop. The photography studio, getting your picture taken back then was a huge deal. And starting in the 19-teens, gas stations were popping up all over the place. Here's the old Canton fire truck. They also had a big model railroad that's accurate with features of railroads in Stark County. McKinley's funeral train. Plus a whole bunch of model trains. I believe this is the only presidential library with dinosaurs. Ew, you can see its insides. There's a Dunkleo Steus Terrelli. And check this out, they have a mastodon. It's a fake, but pretty cool. But they actually have a tusk in this case, the real one. And they have some live snakes in here. There's a bunny at a presidential library. And some birds. Thick toad. Miniature scene back in the Mastodon days. That's like a ground sloth. Those are pretty cool. It's Jurassic Park diorama. So big thumbs up to the McKinley Presidential Library. Now we're going to visit the tomb. Well, it's generally agreed upon that President Ulysses S. Grant has the largest tomb in the United States. I've been there, I have a video there, it's in New York City. But they claim This is the largest tomb in the United States, and I'm not sure. They're both pretty big, so it's either the largest or the second largest tomb in the entire country. The tomb was completed and dedicated in 1907. It was built by the pennies donated by school children. On both sides of the tomb, there are these structures. I think they served as guardhouses, but also as storage for like the, the lawnmower and all that. Because when this was built up on this hill, it was pretty much the middle of nowhere. There are, I believe, 108 steps to the top of the tomb. There's no real like symbolic significance of it, but yeah, there's a lot of steps. Here's the giant statue to the president. From the base of the statue, you can see the museum. And over this way, all that grassy area used to be a reflecting pool. I think up until the 50s. It was just like too hard to maintain, and it brought a lot of mosquitoes and stuff. So they drained that and just turned it into grass. Now Canton is actually getting another McKinley statue soon. There were a lot of tributes and statues made to him across the country when he died. But in Arcata, California, they had a statue of him in the town square. And they recently voted to remove it, and it was removed. And as of today, April 2019, I think it's on its way, and it's going to be placed somewhere in Canton. One thing I've noticed, if you get assassinated or you die in office, you get a bigger tomb. Now at the base of the tomb, it is gigantic. There, McKinley watches over what used to be the reflecting pool. I wish it was still, that would be cool. And the city of Canton, Ohio. The monument was dedicated by President Theodore Roosevelt, who took over after McKinley's death. Theodore Roosevelt was shot in 1912 while campaigning for president, and the man who shot him claimed to have been haunted by the ghost of McKinley, and that McKinley sent him on a quest to murder Roosevelt as revenge. Now all people use the monument for is walking the steps. Here, this is the entryway, and from what I heard, these big bronze doors were the largest ever built at the time. Inside the large double sarcophagus lies the remains of President William McKinley and First Lady Ida Saxton McKinley. After McKinley's funeral, he was placed in the receiving vault at the Canton Cemetery, while plans would be made for a large memorial tomb, and this site was chosen due to its position on a hill, and because McKinley had once suggested that a Soldiers and Sailors monument be built on it. In 1901, fundraising began, and out of 60 designs, Harold Van Buren McGonagall's design was selected. The landscaping is laid out like a cross-hilted sword, with the tomb at the junction of the blade, guard, and hilt, and the stairs represent the blade. The construction began in 1905. President Theodore Roosevelt, Chief Justice William Day, among many other important people, were present at the dedication ceremony in 1907, and a memorial poem was read by James Whitcomb Riley. These interior walls are built of Tennessee marble. The McKinleys had two children, Catherine and Ida, whose remains lie behind this wall. Catherine was born first in 1871, but died of typhoid fever in 1875, and Ida was born in April of 1873, but died in August. The deaths of her children really sparked Ida's depression and permanent health issues. It is a magnificent tribute to an important leader of the United States, and despite this grand national memorial, most Americans don't even know it exists. So that was the McKinley Presidential Library and the tomb. The museum itself is really great. It has about everything you could want. Presidential history, streets of yesterday, dinosaurs. It's great. And this tomb is absolutely incredible. A great place to pay respects to a president, love him or hate him. I feel like this video, I've done a bunch of videos at presidential sites and museums and tombs, so please go check those out. And thanks for watching.